New Jersey's property tax increases have been outpacing inflation, increasing on average by 4.7% in 2025. Inflation that year was 2.7%. The average homeowner in New Jersey is paying a whopping $10,570 a year in property taxes. So what's driving those costs, and more importantly, the increases? Our senior writer and projects editor, Colleen O'Dea, is here to explain. Colleen, great to see you. You talk about the average that the homeowner in New Jersey will pay, but that 4.7 increase on average, what is driving those costs?
So, in recent years, especially, we've actually heard for a long time about healthcare cost increases, but especially more recently, there are some issues with the state health benefits plan, and there are, communities that are part of that. And so that's been going up pretty much by double-digit increases for a number of years. It's expected to do that again this year. So that's really a huge driver. And that is one of the things that is exempt or outside of the cap on property taxes, which we have in New Jersey. Other drivers are inflation. The last year or so, we've seen high inflation. We've seen tariffs kick in, and that has increased prices for school districts, for municipalities, for counties. So that's just generally, inflation is another factor. And then, there are increases in salaries. This is something that we might see in the coming property taxes. We had a huge snow year this year, right? So a lot of the municipalities went through their salt budgets, maybe had to buy more, maybe paid overtime to DPW workers for cleaning the streets. So there are just a whole host of things that can affect property taxes.
Yeah, and we know that property taxes really cover municipal, county, and school services, which you just outlined. Right now, what is the range? It is a pretty big range, actually, when you consider the state as a whole. When you look at the averages, the range kind of shrinks a bit. But what is the range that a person could pay depending on where they live in the state?
So it's a little crazy, but we have some very small communities, and two of our smallest communities are at the top and bottom of that range. So Walpack, which is up in the Northwest, it's mostly federal land, federal park property. Their taxes are only $1,143.
Could you imagine?
On the other hand, wouldn't we all like to be paying that? On the other hand, down in South Jersey, Tavistock is essentially a golf course with a few folks living there. Their property tax last year was $38,387. That's a tax we don't want to be paying. So that's crazy. But, if we're looking at some more generalities, you've got about 63 communities where people are paying less than $5,000 in property taxes, which, again, is something I think that, a lot of people would just covet. And then there are, probably 24 communities where the average tax is more than $20,000. So we do have quite a range.
Well, Colleen, I thought that under Governor Christie, he put in a 2% property tax increase, right? So municipalities couldn't see these wide swings from year to year, and yet we're at 4.7%. So what happened to the 2% property tax cap?
So as Mark Pfeiffer, who is pretty much the expert in New Jersey on property taxes, I'm pretty sure he's been a half century working in state, local government on tax issues. He's now at Rutgers. As he pointed out to me, it's 2% on municipal, 2% on county, 2% on schools. So you could really have a 6% increase any year. But in addition, there are these few items that are exempt from the tax or outside the cap. Health insurance being one of them, because that's just something that municipalities don't have a lot of control of. Emergency costs might also be outside the cap. If there's another torrential storm and there's flooding, responding to that would also be outside of the cap.
And of course, districts and municipalities are allowed to vote to approve a higher tax rate, right? If the school district has made the case to the community that they need it. Many, many have done that recently. I want to talk about general purpose aid to municipalities. What has that looked like? Let's start with the Murphy administration, and now we have a new Sherrill administration. How are they handling that type of aid for municipalities?
So, it's kind of seen that the state has an obligation to schools, not so much municipalities. The municipal aid has literally been unchanged for 2 decades. This year, it's expected to be about $1.4 billion. The only change that has come pretty much has been in what's called extraordinary aid or transition aid, and that's given to maybe a couple dozen municipalities who are having extraordinary issues with their, balancing their budget for emergency reasons or for a host of reasons. So, this year the Governor Sherrill is talking about increasing that amount more than by about 60%, that extraordinary aid amount. But there are a lot of legislators who are saying, everybody should be getting some sort of an increase. It's just been too long.
Yeah, and of
The
course
state
we
is
know there's a record budget number this year, $60.7 billion. So any increases beyond that is likely to get pushback from legislators. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but Colleen O'Dea, thank you for your insight as always.
Thank you so much, Joanna.